Hear ye. It is our honor to welcome you to the KingMaker Podcast.
Well, welcome back to the KingMaker Podcast. We're getting more consistent, Alejandro. This will be like 2 podcasts in a couple weeks. What do you think about that?
Honestly, it feels right, and I really do miss this. We took like a little hiatus of like a month. Like it wasn't planned or anything. It just kind of happened out of nowhere. But I'm glad to be back.
And what's even better is in the conversation we're having today, we're going to talk to somebody who's going to be in the curve and convex ecosystem. It's been like a decade since we had one of those.
No, yeah, like I'm really glad to introduce Thomas. I got introduced to him recently. He's from over in Reserve Protocol, but if you want, Thomas, go ahead, give an introduction to the audience, in case anyone doesn't know who you are, who's Reserve Protocol, and give a little bit of introduction about what you guys do.
Sure. Thanks for having me on, guys. I'm a longtime curve convex enthusiast, and so I've seen you guys around before, so this is fun. But yeah, so I joined Reserve Protocol 6 months ago as a head of platform on the protocol team.
I got to call time out on you. Are you saying you're a fan? Are you saying you're a fan of the KingMaker Podcast, Thomas? Was that what you were saying there?
I am a fan.
Wow, I'm honored. Awesome. Okay, sorry to interrupt. I just had to get that in there.
I've definitely heard of it before. But yeah, so at Reserve, we're focused on fighting inflation and helping folks around the world have access to stable currency. And so we have a two-pronged approach. On one side of the company, we have an app called the Reserve app, which we're actually about to rebrand. But it serves around 700,000 folks, 25,000 merchants, allows anyone to convert fiat into stablecoins, send it around. It's used for payroll. It's used for paying at the store. I think it's live at a Burger King, mostly around LATAM right now. And then actually last week we released that folks can like buy and sell Bitcoin and ETH. But it's all powered by our current stablecoin RSV, which we launched a couple years ago, and it's just like a very basic basket of 3 other stablecoins. And so it essentially diversifies bank custodian risk, which isn't really that helpful in the scheme of things. And so for the last year, we've been working the other side of the company on the protocol team, which is where I am. We've been working on this protocol that we launched just last week that allows anyone to permissionlessly deploy a fully collateralized, yield-bearing, and insured stablecoin. And so that's one of the things that we're really excited to share more about. And given that it's a stablecoin factory, we intend to be heavy participants in the best stablecoin decks. So I think that's how we ended up getting connected.
No, yeah, I'm glad that we got introduced. A couple of people in the Curve ecosystem did speak highly of your protocol, and I'm really glad, honestly, to have a new person show up into the Curve Wars. Have you participated in the past, or are you guys like just making your grand debut like right now, or in the next few weeks?
Yeah, no, it's a good. Well, let's see. So I personally have participated and not done that well in the Curve Wars as a longtime DeFi degen. But we've had a pool for RSV and have played around right when Curve came out, actually. We worked with the Curve team on getting that set up and figuring out the incentives. But at the time, it just didn't really make sense from an economics perspective. We knew that the stablecoin wasn't the RSV, wasn't going to be the long-term successful DeFi stablecoin. It did allow us to prove out that people in other countries want access to dollars via stablecoins. which was really helpful. But at the time, it just wasn't worth it. But myself and some other folks on the team have been thinking about what is the best way to get into it. And so over the last couple months, we've been accumulating a position in CVX, and have been, locking it and in preparation for when there are stable coins to help support.
Okay, yeah, I'm glad. And I was wondering, tell me a little bit about your position. So I heard that you've been accumulating a little position. Can you speak more about that for the audience or no?
Yeah, sure. So I actually tweeted this out like around a month ago. But and I don't know if we can like put it in the show notes or something. But there is our wallet is public with the CVX. We have around 650,000 CVX at the moment that have been locked and accumulating incentives via Vodium for the last couple months. And that we continue to compound into more CVX.
So with the growing position in CVX, what's the mission there? What are you trying to accomplish as a protocol with that as a foundation as you move with this new stablecoin?
Yeah, so in general, it's one of the core things that will be important for the protocol is that there's liquidity in all the assets that we want to trade. And so maybe it's actually helpful if I tell you all a bit more about the protocol and some of the mechanics of it, so that
And absolutely, because we've talked to Volt in the past and Sam with Frax on FPI, and so I'm curious to see how this reserve stablecoin is going to match up with some of the other stablecoins that are out there right now fighting the inflation bug.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think I think we've studied the Frax FPI, and we actually recently launched our RSR Frax base pool on Curve, and have been talking quite a bit with Sam and the Frax team. And so one of the things that's actually interesting is I think it's quite complementary to everything that's out there in DeFi. And so backing up a bit for the audience here, the way one of these things will work is when someone deploys a stablecoin on our platform, they define what is the collateral basket. And that collateral basket ideally is yield-bearing tokens. And so those yield-bearing tokens in the short term will likely be things like USDC that's in Aave, like A tokens or C tokens, the ones in Compound. We're actually launching a Gitcoin hackathon starting next Tuesday with like 250K bounties up for grabs for folks around the DeFi ecosystem to build more collateral plugins so that we can have stablecoins in Uniswap pools, Curve pools, ideally when they're staked on Convex as well for the increased yields. But what's really interesting about all this collateral is that anyone can kind of operate like Circle does, where that collateral is sitting in a bank making, generating revenue. Ideally, the collateral in the stablecoin will also generate revenue on the back end that can be shared in one of really two or three ways. First, it can go to a pool of staked RSR, which is our governance token. And so on every stablecoin on the platform, there will be a staked RSR contract. And if folks choose to stake their RSR there, they will have the opportunity to govern and make decisions on that particular stablecoin. They'll also be able to earn a portion of the yield that's generated by the collateral. The second place the collateral can go is back to the stablecoin holders in the form of appreciation. So like over time, the stablecoin will get higher and higher in value. So if it launches at $1, and depending on what the yield of the collateral is and how much of it's shared with the stablecoin holders themselves, in a year it might be like $1.10 or $1.50, whatever that is. Although with Aave and Compound yields today, maybe like $1.02. The third place that revenue from the collateral can go is actually to any arbitrary smart contract. So that could be like someone that launches a stablecoin on the platform could designate themselves as a recipient of some of the collateral. It could be like a company that's helping to grow it. It could be a smart contract that lets people decide what charity they want their revenue to go to, kind of like Amazon Smile or something. It could be a lottery, kind of like a pool party. where all the revenue gets like accumulated and then a random person is chosen from the stablecoin holders. So that, smart programmable money is kind of a crazy thing that we're fascinated to see what people do with. But so ideally, all of these DeFi primitives can be used as collateral and generate yield. And so the stablecoin could be backed by things like Frax in a curve pool. And so, we really don't see ourselves as necessarily like fighting with all of these things. It's more, we see it as quite complementary. One of the things that we're excited about focusing on is making crypto useful. Like I mentioned, the LATAM presence that we have now. Excuse me, I'm recovering from the Bogota flu. We're excited to make crypto useful. And so, a big piece of that is how do we get people access to things in the DeFi world? And so what's interesting is like one of our stable coins, or R tokens as we call them, can be a gateway to some kind of DeFi yields. And so, these things can be held off chain in an app, like in a custodied app, like, our app or Coinbase or Binance or wherever. They can also be obviously held in, Ledger and MetaMask, etc. But what's cool about that is that no matter where they're held, whether they're bridged to another chain, whatever it is, the collateral continues to generate revenue. And the insurance backstop mechanism will actually work no matter where those coins are held. So we monitor like Chainlink feeds quite closely to ensure that none of the collateral defaults. And if it does default, for instance, if Tether was one of the things in the basket and it defaulted, hypothetically, then some of the RSR from the insurance pool would be sold off to buy more of whatever the backup collateral was for that particular stablecoin. And so that we want to bring that safety element to DeFi and to regular users because we think it's important. We kind of joke around that we have the most grandma stablecoin holders of any of the protocols from our app. And so, at the end of the day, like we want people to feel safe if they're using our stablecoin as a savings mechanism.
What's the makeup of the where in the world people are using your app? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, totally, entirely rather in LATAM at the moment. We're live in Peru, Colombia, Venezuela, Argentina, and Panama. And we just announced that we're going to Mexico next month, and we'll be doing like another, I think it's 18 countries in 24 months over the next 2 years. So we're excited to keep expanding.
Yeah, with the momentum of Bitcoin in Costa Rica, is that one of the spots you're looking at?
Yeah, we're definitely exploring it. I'm admittedly not on the app side, so I'm not as close to the strategy. But it's anywhere that folks want access to stable currency is somewhere we're thinking about. So LATAM was like an obvious first step to us with the inflation that was going on in Argentina and Venezuela. And we built out a pretty strong presence down there. But there's tons of parts of the world now. Like Africa's had tons of issues in the past. Obviously with like Zimbabwe and South Africa, and then the euro's been having some issues lately.
Yeah,
I don't know.
What about that country called the United States? They have some inflation too.
Yeah, that little place. I would love to help fight some of our inflation too. It's pretty interesting.
I gotta say,
Yeah.
I really like what you guys are doing like my because like I'm fine saying this on the podcast. Like my family is from Latin America,
Yeah.
so so just I am gonna make it clear. Like I'm really glad and I'm thankful for you guys doing that because it is really rough down there, and like DeFi, like it's really complicated. So you guys simplifying it and making it more um like friendly for anyone to get into is huge.
That's great to hear, and it's exactly it's one of the things that got me excited about it. Like I mentioned, I've been I've been in crypto I've been losing money in crypto for 9 years now. Um, but the
That's actually quite impressive. If you've
I mean,
only lost money and you've been in for 9 years, that's
I say it a bit tongue in cheek, but after finishing up my taxes yesterday, I don't know. But,
yesterday.
with the extension to
Oh, okay, gotcha.
yesterday was the
All
due.
right.
Um, but but yeah, one of I've been in tech for a long time, and like a product manager at various tech companies and startups. And so one of the big things I was focused on getting into crypto is like, where is it actually useful right now? And there's just such a clear use case in LATAM. It's illegal to hold dollars in many of the countries. Um, like in Colombia, I believe you're not actually allowed to hold dollars in a bank account. In Venezuela, if you put dollars in a bank account, you just think the government will take it. Uh, Same thing in Argentina. So there's like, it's like weirdly difficult just to get a savings account in a stable currency. So this is stable coins at the end of the day are kind of like a regulatory arbitrage that allow you to really get into places where people need help.
What's the regulatory impact or potential pitfalls in situations like that? I mean, just looking at what happened with Tornado Cash Creator here not too long ago. What are the potential? What do you see the potential pitfalls could be with helping spots where it is illegal to hold dollars?
In most of these places, it's kind of interesting. They have a fairly receptive approaches to crypto, and so we don't actually see it as too much of an issue. Like the Argentinian government, for instance, is pretty open to it, to crypto in general, and so it's kind of a hotbed down there in Argentina, and so we actually we see it generally as uh, a good thing, and we're glad that countries see it the same way.
So one thing that I wanted to ask now that we got into regulatory and governments, um, you've been like you I think it's like took a different approach because from what I understand, you guys are not in America and you're not in China, you're not in the UK, mainly South America, is that right?
We have a team based in the U.S. On the protocol team spread all over the world, but the app team in particular has quite a few folks throughout Latin America.
Are you guys concerned like having to deal with American regulation or the lack of thereof? Because I know that's one thing the that's been scary for a lot of the builders and DeFi right now because a lot of people are based in America. Yeah, it's unclear or just I don't know. Well, like I think you understand what I'm trying to go at. Like I wanted to get your input as someone like building an app and part
Yeah,
of a company and all that stuff.
yeah, it's definitely interesting. We've had to like figure out what is the right setups. What I'll say though is like we've focused heavily on ensuring that you know if one of our tokens were to become the future reserve currency of the world, right? That's like a big if. We think that it's really important that there is distributed decision making, right? And so that the decentralization aspect is actually really important. And one of the benefits of that is, when you have that as like a long-term goal, it actually clarifies quite a few things because as long as decision making is decentralized, there aren't the how should I say this? The laws are actually quite clear, and so we've been focused on that from day one, and it's kind of baked into how we designed the whole thing. And so like our code will be hosted on the code is currently hosted on Ethereum. Anyone can go do it. We can't stop that. Anyone can go create a stablecoin, and then that stablecoin, the definition for it will be on Ethereum. Um, the and then like the operations around like creating new ones, like minting the new ones or redeeming them, will all be handled by smart contracts on Ethereum. And so And we designed like a iteration on the Open Zeppelin governor contract, which is itself an iteration of the Compound Bravo contract, which again allows for uh, decentralized decision making, which is like a key component to all that stuff. So we're not we haven't it obviously makes it so that like when you're thinking about things, there's more things to think about in the design process, um, but we don't see it as a hindrance.
So you just said something pretty lofty about if your currency becomes the reserve currency of the world. So let's talk about scalability.
Yeah.
At your hands, die will die, apparently. And, I know there's some scalability issues when you have a collateralized stablecoin. I know you've talked about your basket, but like, how could you even achieve that goal? What would it look like? What scalability look like in your system?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and the funny thing that people forget about DeFi is it's like really small, right? Like,
Exactly,
um,
exactly. You can't. There's only so much CBX you could
exactly.
do.
Yeah, I mean, we realized that when we started buying CVX, and all of a sudden had over 1% of the lock supply. Um, but the um, but yeah, at the end of the day, like DeFi is quite small, and so like uh, our view is very long term. Our goal is to create a new reserve currency, and we actually our hypothesis is that currencies shouldn't necessarily be fully fiat. They should actually be asset backed. And over time, we believe that asset backed currencies will actually more resemble like a long term wealth preservation and creation portfolio. So, like you might have heard of like the 60/40 portfolio or something like that. Even that's still a bit volatile, but there's other ones, like tons of folks have been thinking about this for like 100 years. Like, what is the best way to store wealth and not touch it for a while? Um, if you start to store it in a portfolio of things like real estate and land and corporate equities and government treasuries and things like that, um, the corporate bonds and equities and government treasuries. I was combining things a bit there, but we think that it's actually possible to smooth out the volatility a bit, and still kind of keep up with inflation. And so our long-term hypothesis is one that people will recognize asset-backed currencies as a better way to just store money and spend money. And two, that more and more assets will get tokenized. And so, over the next 10, 15 years, you'll have tokenized real estate options that are, generating cash flow. You'll have tokenized securities and things of that nature. And so, our hope is that over time, our tokens will be able to do that. And it's actually interesting. Our the protocol is quite flexible, and so one of the core tenets was make sure that we can upgrade things and also make sure that we can make adjustments, right? Like people don't actually set it and forget it, especially as new asset classes are coming on chain, and so like governance can change what the basket is over time, and bring in new things, adjust, etc.
So that's extremely fascinating. Again, just trying to wrap my brain around the scalability of that. So basically, what you're saying is it'll just be you and Ohm left as the reserve currencies.
We think that the market will just entirely get quite a bit larger, and like you really hit on it there that if we are a fully collateralized stablecoin, that requires at least the market of the collateral. It can't go bigger than the market of the available collateral, right? And so
Exactly.
yeah, so like I mean, what the total market cap of crypto is just under $1 trillion right now. The market cap of gold is 11 trillion. Um, so I think anyone that's really into the crypto world probably thinks that we're still on the low end in the long term if more and more things get tokenized, et cetera, et cetera. So I think the reality is that I don't know. I hate to like say say the buzz phrase too much, but like it does still feel like we're early in the scheme of things, if this thing's going.
And we are going to make it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Wag me.
I was looking at, I see you call this it's more than a company, it's a human project. Um, and talk about that and how does that play in with the curve and convex ecosystem and really what you're trying to achieve here?
Yeah, the let's see, where to start? Yeah, we do see it as a bit of a movement, right? Like I talked a bit about the asset-backed currency thing. That kind of requires people to really think differently about money. And so, that's one big aspect of it is we want more and more people to get involved and think about their money in this new way, as opposed to, like the money printer kind of controlling how much they can spend over time. Um, we want folks to think about like what should be the thing that's backing my savings and how is it going to grow over time, et cetera. That being said, like not everyone's going to do that. And not everyone wants to do that. And in fact, I actually think it's kind of crazy that so many people do spend so much time managing their wealth and managing their finances. Like I don't know how old you guys are, but I'm in my 30s and like all my friends talk about is finance, right? And like it's kind of crazy that we all spend so much of our lives thinking about how to maintain or slightly increase our spending power in the long term, right? Like, it's
My
kind of a
friends
wild.
talk about retirement, so like I'm with you. The conversation just slightly changes, but yeah, it's always about finance.
It's always about finance, and it's kind of insane. Like, what could we do as a species if we weren't always worrying about how much stuff we could buy, right? I think, and so yeah, so that is one piece of it. I think another piece of it is like how do we make large decisions as a group? I touched on our governance a bit, but at the end of the day, like token voting isn't that great. There's tons of issues with it. You get the free rider problem. You got the I don't know, the rich guy makes the decisions problem. You open yourself up to governance attacks, etc. And so, people ask me like, how do I get into crypto? And I'm like, I go study government, because I think that that's like one of the most important things. And we think that long term, like we're actively trying to invent a better form of governance on chain. Like whatever that is, with like different checks and balances and different pieces of the power structure to make sure that you can have like really deep um, technical understanding and decision making for very specific things, but at the same time have the checks and balances to make sure that those folks make decisions that are um, in the interest of the larger collective. And so, I'm not saying like we have all the answers. There's tons of folks working on this, and it's actually something we're like excited to work on with the broader ecosystem um, of Ethereum, DeFi, crypto generally. But yeah, I think that's like another aspect that's it's part of it's really a human project. Trying to think.
Well,
And the third thing, go
real
ahead.
quick, like, and I see it as um, if you are ultimately to be, reach all the dreams that you could become,
Yep.
it doesn't mean other people don't win. They're just
Yeah,
potential collateral for what you're building as the reserve currency.
exactly, exactly. And so we really do see ourselves as like a piece of infrastructure. This is at this point maybe it's a bit lofty to say this, but in the same way that like Uniswap is like a core piece of infrastructure for DeFi, we kind of see ourselves as well as like a core piece of infrastructure that is a vessel to wrap other things and make it accessible to the outside world, whether that's cross-chained onto L2s or roll-ups or in fully custodied apps, whatever that is. This is a piece of infrastructure that allows people to like set up the economics, set up the governance, et cetera, and handle all those things in like a very safe way on Ethereum, um, but then access it wherever they need to access it.
And I really don't see Uniswap as anything. I see Curve as something though.
Fair, fair. Um,
But yeah, we may be a little bit biased.
fair, fair. I always use curve when possible. But it is I mean, what's super interesting about Curve and that it's the stablecoin swap like spot, right? With the low slippage is that if there are all these currencies and all these different stablecoins that are deployed on our platform or that come in from, I was just at DevCon and talked to a whole bunch of different folks that are working on, tokenized currencies and, for currencies around the world. Why wouldn't Curve be the FX exchange where all of these things are exchanging value and figuring out how to trade back and forth? I don't know about you guys, but I remember when the V2 pools came out, and I was like, "Holy shit, it's an FX exchange!" And I was like, why would this not be where all the stable coins are swapping?
And
Um,
that's what's been bubbling behind the scenes for a long time. Just go on Discord
um,
and look what people talk about. There's been that sort of connection or analogy that that's where this is going.
yeah, I think it's like a natural place. Um, yeah, when V2s came out, there was a light bulb moment for me when there was like a Euro pool. I was like, whoa, this like the first Euro USDC pool, I think it was, or maybe it was Euro Try Crypto. I was like, whoa, this is FX is a big market. Um, so yeah, there's tons of folks that are working on like tokenizing more and more currencies, and it would seem natural that exchange would take place on Curve, given the low slippage.
So if you're successful, I'm talking theoretical now. Uh,
Yeah,
does inflation disappear? Like if we have a reserve currency that is backed by commodities, and we're no longer as tied into fiat currencies,
sure.
how do you see that playing out on a global scale?
Yeah. All right, so first of all, I am not a macroeconomist. There's lots of complexity that goes into inflation that I'm sure I'll miss here. But like, boil it down to the very simple, and the appreciation and the revenue generated by collateral needs to be higher than the rate of money printing in order to beat inflation. And this is actually something I need to dig into more of Frax. Like, how do they make up the difference when they don't, on FPI, when they don't have enough revenue to, keep up with the money printing that happened in the meantime. Um,
I can answer that, but continue.
but like, so our goal is to try to keep up with inflation in the short term, especially with where DeFi yields are today, in the safer spots. But in the long term, ideally, you can get to a more diversified basket of things that might include things like commodities like Ethereum, Bitcoin, gold. Those are all things that are available now. It might include things like equities, et cetera, that in theory do typically beat inflation. And so ideally, the reserve currency could not just preserve wealth, but also create wealth along the way.
I actually find that really interesting, and I wanted to ask. So I'm really excited about. The, at first, I was considering you guys as a stablecoin, but like I guess I didn't. I come into this completely like not knowing anything. But if you guys are really trying to be a reserve currency, what I guess is too much in the future or too hypothetical. But do you guys have like any idea like what would you guys want to add? Because from what I understood, you have mainly stable coins right now backing you, or am I wrong? Or have you already like implemented ETH and Bitcoin and all that stuff?
Yeah, so we have so it's a pretty flexible system where as long as there's a collateral plugin for an asset, it can be incorporated into a basket, either on a new stablecoin that's deployed, or governance can vote to add it to the basket. And so right now we have plugins for Wrap Bitcoin and Wrap Ethereum, um, WBTC and ETH on Aave and Compound, and then a bunch of different stablecoins on Aave and Compound. There's like 18 right now. But I mentioned it earlier. We're doing a Gitcoin hackathon starting on Tuesday, where our goal is to just cover like the top 20 or 30 things on DeFi Llama, so that all of those are accessible as collateral for governors or deployers to add to the basket. And so yeah, right now you could actually there's been like 5 that have been deployed, and one of them is a stabilized Bitcoin, which is like 10% Bitcoin, 90% USDC. It was, I think it was deployed as a joke, but kind of fun.
That should have some clever name. I can't
Oh,
come up with one real quick. Go ahead, Alejandro.
so honest, honestly, I'm think like considering that anyone could go create one. You deployed a couple days ago, so like me and Keith can go play around with it,
Yeah,
see like we create a basket of our own, right?
yeah, you can go do it right now. There's one at it's register.app is the website of the dApp that we partnered with a third party to build.
Make sure to call it Kingmaker,
Yeah.
so if it becomes famous, they remember us.
Yeah, and you could even set a portion of the revenue to go towards your guys' wallet.
Let's create a llama token.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Yeah, let's be curved to it.
I'm really excited for CRV USD to come out because it'll be really interesting to see what kind of collateral that could be. Um, like where is the yield going? How does it work, etc. It will be a really fascinating thing to see. Or is it just like a stable coin that's fully collateralized by the collateral tokens? Either way, it could be interesting collateral for us to wrap and make more accessible around the world.
One thing that I think is interesting that not a lot of people are thinking about is that a lot of protocols, such as yourself, accumulating either Curve or VLCVX, so one way or another, they're getting exposure or they're getting Curve itself.
Yep.
So honestly, what I'm excited to play out, that at least one thing that people don't keep in mind is I'm really interested to see what all these protocols and companies and whatnot do when that happens with Curve USD and with the exposure that they get. Like with your huge CVX position, you're gonna be accumulating a bunch of Curve and FXX through Convex. So it's stuff like that that I'm really interested. You don't have to say like what you're gonna do right now if you don't want to, but it's just something that at least for the audience to keep in mind because you'll have access you have access to a lot of Curve USD in the future.
Yeah, it is really interesting, and we don't exactly have a fully fleshed out like flywheel plan yet. In the short term, the goal we do have an RSR frac space pool. We do intend to use our uh, CVX position to incentivize that with the vote next Thursday. Uh, and then once we have our tokens that are deployed and that we think are safe, etc., then our plan is to incentivize those and vote for those pools as well. So basically, it's like to start just incentivizing those, and then to use any of the various reward streams that come in from the Curve and Convex ecosystem to either accumulate more voting power for further incentives to make it sustainable. Could also, uh, build liquidity for protocol to fund protocol operations, a variety of different things.
So you've given us like a couple bits and pieces, but I want to tie this together. Those of us who want to get involved with the reserve protocol,
Sure.
break it down? Step 1, 2, 3. What all can we be involved with right now, and what are the things right around the corner we can get involved with?
Yeah, so right now you can go deploy a stablecoin at register.app. We're gonna give the like all clear sign in the next month or so once we feel really good about like testing and some audits that are coming back, etc. And once we finished, yeah, basically trying to break everything now that it's live on mainnet. But once that happens, we think that this is an interesting way to save money safely. And so you can either let's see, I'm giving a bit of a rambling answer here. So you can either deploy a stablecoin today with the caveat that it's like brand new code, You can join us for, if you're a developer, you can join us for a Gitcoin hackathon next week, where we'll be, paying out quite a few bounties, 250K bounties for new collateral plugins. If you've got ideas, or if you're looking for ideas, the top 20 or 30 on DeFi Llama is a great starting spot. Or hopefully there's some folks that have done a lot of development in the Curve Convex ecosystem that want to build those collateral plugins, because they're two of the ones that I'm most excited about. And then, we will be incentivizing things in the Reserve ecosystem quite a bit, similar to how Frax incentivizes anything using Frax Baseball. We'll be doing the same with tokens that are deployed on our platform. So that'll be another way to get involved if you want to farm our pools.
Awesome. So, 1, deploy stablecoin on a new platform. 2,
Yep.
hackathon. What's the exact date of that?
Yeah, it starts on 10/25, and it's going to run for 6 weeks.
6 weeks. Okay. So you can get involved in that 250K in your stablecoin as the bounty.
We're going to pay out in a combination of governance RSR, which is our governance token, and probably USDC for now.
Okay. And then 3 is farm the heck out of your farms and take all the farmage.
Yeah, if you so choose. I'm not giving any investment advice, but if that's something that you're into, there will likely be tons of incentives in the Reserve ecosystem on Curve and Convex.
Awesome. Well, this has been a fascinating conversation. Just talking to a protocol with as a big a vision, and in a lot of ways as noble of a vision of helping those who are in hyperinflation type economies. So I really appreciate your time today, Thomas.
Yeah.
So we like to ask this question to wrap things up. And again, we've gone out 100 years, I guess, in the protocol. But look into the crystal ball just a few years into the future. Let's say it's 2025. What does perfection look like with Reserve Protocol and what you've achieved?
That's a good question. See, I've got my 1-year goals. So I think in the short term, quote unquote, 5 years, I think what success looks like is there's 2 very big R tokens. One that's either no yield or safe yield. There's a second that's more of an inflation resistant one. And those 2 are quite large. They're generating quite a bit of fees for the insurance pool, for the staked RSR, which is how we plan to stay solvent in the very long term. So all of a sudden we're like sustainable, et cetera, and we can start to figure out how do we continue to make crypto useful around the world. And I realize we're kind of at the end, but one example of how we did this recently is we announced. Are you guys familiar with MobileCoin?
I'm not.
No, I'm not.
It's a privacy focused L1 blockchain that is it uses like Stellar consensus, but it's also a lot of similar technology to Signal, the messaging app. And they actually announced a partnership with us, and they're launching one of these R tokens. It's called EUSD, that will be bridged there and accessible on the MobileCoin blockchain. As like the first private stablecoin. And so, that's like another example of like how we want to make it useful. But so in terms of 5 years, I think that, more people around the world can just access and stave stable currency than they can today. Because if you look at like the world population, like, what is it? It's like, call it 1 billion of the 8 billion actually have access to stable currency. We'd love to get that up to, 8 billion have access.
Right. So here's my quick take, Thomas, and we'll see what you think. I think if you kicked this off maybe 9 months ago, You may not have the impact or success of kicking it off now. I think so many times there's like that moment in time when you're worried you're too late, too early, whatever. But
Yeah.
being a builder as things are down, when collaterals are extremely affordable, this to me this feels like the perfect timing. What's your take? I'd say Kairos timing, right? The fullness
Yeah.
of time of the right time for it to happen. What do you think about that?
Yeah. I actually think it's exactly right. I'm feeling like super fortunate that I found uh, that this company like found me at this time and this thing that I'm super interested in at like the perfect what I think is the perfect time to build. And so it's a so yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it's a really good time. A lot of the like craziness and like no one's looking for 100 extras right now. And I think that people are going to have a much more sober approach to crypto and speculation next round. That's everyone says that
I
every
hope not.
cycle.
I want rocket fuel.
But I think that there will be a more sober, realistic approach to things. In general, like how things are reported on, and things like that. And I do think that we have like a very sober, rational approach. And so I hope that that'll shine through in the next one.
No, I want your stable coin to 10x. I want those predictions out there on crypto Twitter. But
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, stablecoins are kind of a funny thing. Like at the end of the day, the business model is very straightforward. Just grow that AUM and generate more fees with the collateral
that's right. And share.
and share. Exactly.
Alejandro,
But
go
yeah,
ahead, Alejandro. I know you like to have them plug stuff, but go ahead. Sorry.
no, yeah, my bad. One thing I was just saying is that besides like how cheap CVX is right now, and honestly is the perfect time, like $5 is a steal. But I think it was really good that I think they waited until after the bull market was over just because they get to like observe and like learn from all the other stablecoin protocols that came and went over the months and how they crashed and burned and all that stuff. So, you know, because so like the new builders, I don't, they're not new because he said that they're like, they've been around for a couple of years, but you get what I mean, that they can learn and not commit the same mistakes as they did.
It's exactly right. If you look at the bribes that were getting paid on CVX back in like February of this year, they were astoundingly expensive for what they were paying. It's wild. So yeah, I'm feeling fortunate from a growth perspective that it's a lot cheaper to participate in the curve wars for sure.
So, he, so I know we are reaching the end, and I won't keep you up. If anything, we'll have a part two, and we could dive deeper or anything that we missed. But if there's anything you're excited about that you want to announce or share, or anything you want the audience to go look at, go shill, whatever you want to shill, and yeah, go ahead.
I've mentioned it a couple times, but really excited for the Gitcoin hackathons. I want as many collateral plugins as possible for folks to build. The other thing is, I mentioned it briefly, but if you're interested in using a crypto that functions very similar to cash, go check out USD and MobileCoin. It's fully collateralized by our stablecoins on the Ethereum blockchain, but it's usable in a form that you can send money to a friend and don't have to worry about anything. And yeah, so go check it out. We think it's like the most usable money out there. You pay the fees like a quarter cent transaction fee in the same currency, so you don't have to worry about like gas or anything like that. So we think that it could be really big.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Thomas, I truly appreciate the time today. Thanks for coming on. And like Alejandro said, we'll definitely have to do a part two because I feel like you launched 1 week ago. So I think there's going to be a lot
Yeah.
happening in the near term. So if you don't mind, we'll definitely be in touch and we'll look forward to recording again soon.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to come back on. Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it. Great questions, and yeah, this is a one of the communities that I consider myself a part of.
Kingmaker